a massive dragon descends upon the party below with alarming speed. Caught out in the middle of an open field, with nowhere to hide, they have no choice but to dig in their heels and ready themselves for a dangerous fight. They all try to put on a brave face, well aware they don't have the strength they used to, and the risk of suffering at least one casualty seems unavoidable. Yet to the party's surprise, they notice Nadar hasn't drawn a weapon, and in fact, looks a little sheepish. Then the dragon lands before them, with a sweet and motherly voice, fussing over her sweet young man. The party just stays out of the way as Nadar suffers an awkward public reunion with his overly affectionate mother. Quite happy to have found Nadar after his scent could be found far away from the stink of Dale, she wishes him well on his little gap year and lets him return to his friends. As Nadar quickly leads the way to Bristol to avoid addressing the scene that just played out, it's not long before everyone finds themselves back where it all began. They are quickly reminded of how far back in time they were actually sent, as they are still hearing mutterings on the street of Patrick Wass, the were-rat that was recently murdered. But just as they start to wonder what had happened to the rest of the were-rats, they find an elderly dwarf quickly darting towards them, his eyes set on Golkak. He introduces himself as no one else but the master smith, Aldrin Stonehammer, and it seems he already knows of Golkak. Before the Goliath can even ask, Aldrin mentions he's heard great things from Golkak's close friend back at his tribe, Vorn Sunbringer. Then, in perhaps one of the best moments of his life, Golkak is offered an immediate apprenticeship to help him develop his rune magic that he's been working on. She encourages him to take this unbelievable opportunity, and promises that they will come back to check on him in between whatever adventures they get up to. So with a tearful goodbye between two close friends, she and the rest of the party wave off Golkak and continue on to the tavern. Making up for the somber moods, they are offered more free drinks at the First Bill Tavern for what feels like a lifetime ago of scaring off the were-rat. However, as everyone else starts to enjoy themselves, including she having his first ever drink, Dane begins to notice that Kate has been quieter since Hudali. Dane recognises that Kate may not be used to the sight of death, violence, and undead, and so he tries to console her. It doesn't seem to work. Eventually, Kate and Dane get themselves a separate room, and turn in early for the night, while the rest drink until she passes out with his new friends. She wakes up with the rest of the party on the floor to discover what a hangover is, and decides in that moment to swear off drinking forever. Then Dane comes down to join them, alone. The others see the note in the dwarf's hands, and learns that Kate left a note saying her goodbyes during the night. Before the party can think of a way to cheer him up that doesn't require more hangovers, Dane heads out back behind the tavern to solve his troubles in the most barbarian way possible, knocking some heads together in the fighting pits. But as he enters the ring to face his first opponent, he spots a mildly familiar-looking elf that he can't quite place. The poor dwarf, already hurting enough on the inside, remembers just a little too late that this elf was no one other than the Viscount's cousin himself, Carrick. The well-trained monk, a senior member of the monastery at the remote village of Lostwick, clearly has several hundred years of combat training over the heartbroken dwarf. But sensing his heart isn't in the fight, Carrick stops to offer the dwarf a merciful surrender. Dane takes it as an insult, and rushes forward to show the elven monk what he's made of. And in turn, Carrick shows the poor dwarf what the ground is made of. Up close. Carrick then generously offers the dwarf a drink back inside, with the small amount of coin that he's been allowed to carry with him for his mission from Lostwick. As it just so happens, however, the elf already completed his mission far earlier than anticipated, and before heading back for his next assignment, he was thinking of visiting his cousin over in the breeze soon. Yet now that he's found some kindred souls, he decides it can't hurt to tag along with them for a while, at least until he returns to Lostwick again. They discover a new 1,000 gold contract on the tavern bounty board to recover a large amount of missing gold stolen from a local business recently. As they make their way to speak with the person who posted the job, they stop to buy a newspaper from a young boy who appears to be struggling to get by. After Carrick charitably offers the boy what he considers to be a fortune, they take a look at the latest news going on around the city. They learn of the discovery of a grisly murder that occurred last night, where apparently an unidentified dwarf was found cut up and stuffed in a barrel. The party consider going on a hunt for a dwarf-hunting serial killer after their current mission, and they also notice an interesting article in the paper involving the Magical Emporium. It re-examines the most interesting case that occurred about 10 years ago, when the Magical Emporium reported for the first time in its thousands and thousands of years of its existence that someone had managed to successfully steal something. Apparently, the suspect or suspects were somehow able to evade the unmatched defences of the Emporium and get away with a powerful warhammer. Carrick picks up on this, letting them in on a hush-hush secret from the monastery, that apparently it was only one man who left with the warhammer, and that he was a short brown-haired human with a limp called Cole Skinner. After making note of that, the party wasted no more time in meeting with the man offering the 1,000 gold contract, and learning that someone spotted a figure heading into the sewers the night of the robbery. Now suspecting the were-rats must be responsible, they return to the original scene of the crime to find Patrick Wass's co-workers. Upon entering the sewers, they navigate the stinky maze a small way, before coming across the body of a poor young man who got caught in a makeshift trap. The party's morale is lowered somewhat at finding a draft note he kept on him, intending to be a promise to his sick mother that he would return with the 1,000 gold to help her get better. Keeping him in their thoughts, the party makes sure to be wary of traps going forth, not letting his death go to waste. They finally find their way to the major were-rat lair, and find themselves not only facing off against the were-rats themselves, but also a giant pet crocodile as well. After a hairy and livery fight, the party managed to grab the gold and escape the croc, heading up a ladder to the surface the were-rats had made for themselves. To their surprise, they find themselves climbing out of a makeshift hole, leading to the guardhouse cells, where criminals of the city are kept. And who would the party come face to face with but Zook himself, awaiting his imminent execution for the murder of Wendy. Thankfully, the party aren't trapped behind the cell as Zook is, and this time no one has any intention of freeing him, so they leave behind the enraged gnome barking at them. They make sure to mention the secret were-rat lair below the cells to the guards as they make their way out, much to their horror. They return to the job poster, and receive an extra generous reward, not only for finding the gold, but also dealing with the separate were-rat infestation. With their pockets weighing them down, they can't help but return to meet their dear friend, Ickle the Goblin. They get a warm welcome from their old friend in the rundown shack. Not that Ickle is aware they've been gone any longer than a week. Dane receives the most attention, as it seems the Goblin has a little crush, and the dwarf doesn't hesitate to play along and flirt back. However, as Ickle asks a few follow-up questions about the undead they cleared out for him, Dane seems to show a lot of curiosity towards the dead man and the locket when it's brought up. Nadar, being the only other member of the party to still remember the events back at the beginning of the adventure, finds it odd that Dane can't recall these details for himself. He was there after all. But once Dane apologises for his poor memory, they decide not to push the issue, at risk of making him feel bad. Finally, with the conclusion of their magical purchases, it seems as good a time as any to call it for the day, and start making their way back to the tavern. More money left to spend. They take the longer scenic route, passing by the markets to peruse the knickknacks on offer, and maybe even buy a famously delicious brisket chicken for dinner. Yet amidst the crowd, she suddenly spots another tabaxi, this one female, the same time that she spots him. At first he thinks nothing of it, and goes to look away, until he notices the woman takes a sudden interest in him, and starts beelining towards him immediately. As she gets closer, it dawns on she that the woman shares his exact black coat of fur, with the same familiar thin build, and a sudden cautious curiosity takes him over. There, the woman named Luna gently takes hold of his arm, her eyes wide open, and refers to him by his full name. As the unmistakable look of recognition fills she's eyes, he finds himself suddenly and tightly embraced by what appears to be his own mother. As Luna is beside herself with shock and relief, she turns his emotions inward, questioning everything, as he has no memory whatsoever of his mother, or any of his family for that matter. He simply recalls being no older than 6, led into the forest by animals acting as a guide from his goddess Felicia, where he met Merrin, his druid elven mentor, the only parent figure that he ever knew. As far as his memory recalls, he's never visited a settlement in his life, only doing so now with Golkak after his mentor mysteriously disappeared without a trace during the night. This tabaxi's emotions seem genuine, yet she has to assume this is some kind of trick, perhaps by an enemy of his goddess Felicia. Perhaps this could even be the ploy of the goddess Liberia, the much more widely known goddess of sunlight that is worshipped in the churches all along Wolen and beyond. Yet the confusion, or borderline panic on She's face, goes unnoticed by his apparent mother, as she encourages him to return with her to meet his father and brother. The party, unaware of She's current internal crisis, just waves him off happily, and lets him reconnect. So the poor, paranoid She is led by a tear-filled mother back to the thriving family business called the Salted Whisker. There, she meets a jolly and overweight ginger tabaxi named Takashi, with a serious talent for cooking up the best meats and noodles in town. Upon his father spotting him from across the kitchens, he lunges at his dear boy, and gives him an almost spine-crushing bear hug. By now, She's cynicism begins to melt away, as a sense of identity and familiarity that he never knew he desired begins to overtake him. He embraces his family fully, tears in his eyes, as he is asked to accept so much all at once. And then his mother informs him that she's just sent a message out to his brother, Ryuzaki, over in the Brie, so that he can come and join the family reunion shortly. But the excitement of meeting an older brother is quickly snuffed, as she learns that his very own brother is a senior member of the Sunlight Church. And his blood goes cold as he realizes his own brother is now his sworn mortal enemy.